Do you know Billy Idol's real name? William Michael Albert Broad. I guess William Broad, or Willie Broad, just wasn't punk rock enough. The name Idol came from a school teacher who commented on a report card that Billy was often idle. I-D-L-E, not I-D-O-L. Who knows whether it caught on among his classmates, but as a rock star, Billy Idol's a pretty good name. In popular culture and entertainment, we've made a great deal out of our idols. One only needs see a teen respond to their favorite pop idols to witness the power that they can have. And while idolatry is a central issue in the Bible, our culture, and even some within the church, evidence little aversion to it. Now, last time we talked about the Apostle Paul's perspective on idolatry and how combating idolatry played a central theme in his ministry and his gospel presentation. Now, as we continue to look at the end of Acts 19, I want to take a closer look, not at the apostle, but at the issue of the Ephesian idolatry and what I'll call the gods behind the God. Now, as I mentioned last time, the conflict in Ephesus was initially an issue of economics. Paul's ministry was having an adverse impact on the sale of silver shrines or idols to the god Artemis. Judging by the response, the real god wasn't Artemis, it was Mammon. In other words, their gods were wealth and prosperity. They could make it about the goddess Artemis, but it was the god behind that drove them. Notice how Demetrius continues in verse 27, and there is danger not only that this trade of ours may come into disrepute, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will be scorned. She will be deprived of her majesty that brought all Asia and the world to worship her. When they heard this, they were enraged and shouted, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians!" The second god was their civic pride. It wasn't simply Artemis' reputation and honor, it was theirs. It was their majesty that they were concerned for. Notice it's Artemis of the Ephesians, they chanted. She's ours. The worship of Artemis had put them on the map. It was her worship that brought people from all over the world, and as a result gave them a sense of dignity and worth, elevating them over their neighbors. To disregard her would be to destabilize them. Now, if the second god was civic pride, the third was their ethnic pride. And jump down to verse 32. The assembly was in confusion. Some were shouting one thing, some another. Most of the people did not even know why they were there. The Jews in the crowd pushed Alexander to the front and they shouted instructions to him. He motioned for silence in order to make a defense before the people, but when they realized he was a Jew, they all shouted in unison for about 2 hours, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." Kind of makes you think of modern day soccer hooligans, doesn't it? It wasn't just anyone who sought to impoverish and deprive their city of esteem, it was a Jew. And in their disdain, they shouted for 2 hours. It's fascinating when you think about it. Mammon, nationalism, and racism drove the people in Ephesus, all hiding under the cover of their devotion to Artemis. And what does the gospel do? It unmasks, it exposes their idolatries for what they are and seeks to uproot them. And people are happy to let you believe what you want to believe unless it happens to threaten the deep down things. And Paul wasn't beaten, stoned, and left for dead because of what he believed. He was beaten, stoned, and left for dead because by his beliefs, he took an axe to the roots of idolatry in the world around him and he began to chop. It is dangerous work, but it is gospel work. I pray God would give us faithfulness to withstand the temptations of idolatry and boldness to say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done. Have a blessed week.